From one of the deadliest body shot TKOs of all time to a bone-crunching head kick to win the welterweight championship. These are Georges St-Pierre's greatest knockouts revealed. Georges St-Pierre has delivered some of the most action-packed fights in UFC history and became an icon of the sport for his 9 successful title defenses. But did you know he once knocked out an opponent by exclusively relying on his frickin' knee? That's right, GSP was so dominant back in his prime that he defeated Matt Serra at UFC 83 without using his fists. The Canadian superstar simply had the ultimate package. His combination of elite fighting IQ, a wide range of attacks, and sheer overpowering strength helped GSP become arguably the best to ever do it. His championship matchup with Serra went exactly as everyone expected. Except, no one could have predicted the nature of his game plan. An ultimately unique knockout over his challenger. Let's not forget, Serra handed St-Pierre his first career loss just a few years prior, so GSP was gunning for revenge. Serra is one of only 2 fighters to ever take down the welterweight giant, but at UFC 83, he couldn't stave off GSP's furious wrath. In lieu of his typical strike-heavy approach, St-Pierre dictated the fight on the ground. Within the opening minutes of the second round, he managed a successful takedown and forced Serra into the turtle position. Let's just say that's the last place you want to be when facing off against St-Pierre. As the final seconds of the round ticked away, GSP showcased his completely unstoppable skill set. He had the opportunity to submit Serra, but nah, that was too easy for a man seeking vengeance. Instead, GSP opted for a crushing sequence of knees to the body. Because of the leverage he had, St-Pierre was able to generate a ridiculous amount of power behind his knees. He landed 4 brutal blows to the body, which folded Serra in half and forced the referee to stop the fight. Serra could be seen gasping for air and was milliseconds away from passing out due to the pain. GSP was crowned the undisputed welterweight champion and exacted his sweet, sweet revenge. His victory over Serra contends with some of the craziest body shot TKOs of all time.
Before a few years ago, I was always trying to force things, and I think the best way in fighting is to set up some trap. So when your opponent step in, it's easier to get him.
But let's take a look at St-Pierre's first ever knockout in the UFC. Back in 2004, GSP was emerging as a rising star in the relatively new fighting promotion. After kicking off his professional MMA career with 5 consecutive victories, he was awarded a contract with the UFC. The Canadian warrior won his first bout against Karo Parisyan and was set to spar with Jay Heron at UFC 48. At just 23 years of age, GSP was desperate to make a name for himself, and boy did he shatter expectations.
We had ups and downs and discussion. It's been a long time, a long process. I want to say thanks to the UFC, thanks to my management team to make that possible. And
the fight was over from the moment the fighters touched gloves. St-Pierre came out swinging, connecting on several strikes to the head, and knocking down Heron twice in the opening minute of the contest. While GSP was seeing red, Heron was on the ropes, begging for mercy. With a stunning right hook, Heron was sent tumbling into the corner of the octagon. GSP stood over his weakened prey and unleashed his fury. He threw as many punches as humanly possible, creating one of the most fatal combinations known to man. As each and every strike landed, Heron's face puffed up and reached a point of no return. The referee quickly called the fight, just 1 minute and 42 seconds into the contest. GSP remained unbeaten and earned the respect of fans around the globe. Let's take a look at one of the goriest contests in the history of the UFC. In 2009, St-Pierre was the reigning welterweight champion and was set to defend his belt against BJ Penn. It was their second time facing off against one another, with GSP winning the first matchup via split decision. The first 4 rounds of UFC 94 were a bloodbath. It was clear that the Canadian was the much better fighter, yet Penn's toughness and determination kept his chances alive. Simply put, Penn was taking a frickin' beating. By the 4th round, he looked completely gassed and provided little counterplay. GSP dominated the entire 4th round, controlling the fight with his iconic ground and pound game. Penn just couldn't manage to break free and quite literally spent all 5 minutes on the defensive. The skill gap between the fighters was frightening, and the contest became really hard to watch. As the bell finally rang, Penn's corner ended up throwing in the towel. Despite his indomitable spirit, GSP was just far too clinical to handle. While the TKO might not have been as brutal as some others on this list, UFC 94 showcased St-Pierre's absurd power and ability to manhandle his opponents. Moving on, let's dive into GSP's dominance at UFC 56. After going 4-1 in his first 5 fights in the promotion, GSP was quickly becoming a household name. With 2 submission victories to go along with his knockout over Matt Serra, he quickly earned a reputation as a dangerous figure in the UFC. But his opponent, Sean Shirk, was considered one of the best fighters in professional MMA thanks to his ridiculous record. The first round of the contest was relatively evenly matched, with the judges slightly favoring GSP. But the second round was where the magic happened. St. Pierre locked in and never looked back. The opening minutes of the round were controlled by the Canadian, who leaned on his exceptional ground and pound game to gain the advantage. He pressed Shirk into the fence and pummeled him with a variety of strikes. Once GSP got leverage, he turned Shirk's face into a bloody mess. Thanks to a series of elbows to the nose and jaw, Shirk rapidly started to fade. St. Pierre seized the initiative and finished off his opponent in brutal fashion. He landed over 20 head strikes to go along with a number of painstaking body shots. Referee Herb Dean was forced to call the fight just 2 minutes into the second round. His cataclysmic knockout over Sean Shirk marked a turning point in his decorated career. GSP would soon get his first shot at the welterweight title, and the rest is history. So let's jump into the legendary knockout that earned St. Pierre his first UFC championship. The year was 2006, and GSP became the #1 contender in the welterweight division. After taking down UFC legend BJ Penn, St. Pierre was set for a rematch against the reigning champ, Matt Hughes. Their heated rivalry was in full effect, as Hughes previously submitted GSP to snatch the welterweight title. At the time, Hughes was responsible for St. Pierre's sole defeat as a professional fighter. The UFC community was foaming at the mouth, eager for GSP's revenge tour. UFC 65 went down as one of the most iconic fights in the history of the sport. GSP showcased all the tools in his arsenal, completely outclassing Hughes in each and every way. The tension in the octagon was palpable. St. Pierre was off to an impressive start, ambushing his opponent at will and chipping away at Hughes's legs and body. But the commentator crew was somewhat surprised at GSP's patience and commitment to unleashing his full array of attacks. He wasn't throwing a ton of head strikes, nor was he banking on his lethal ground and pound approach. Instead, St. Pierre continued his balanced approach and looked like a man on a mission. Many fans expected Hughes to defend his belt, as he continued to ward off GSP's takedown attempts. With just a few moments remaining in the second round, Hughes wound up on his back. GSP took the initiative, but missed his chance as his opponent fought his way out of a problematic position. Hughes made his way back onto his feet until St. Pierre threw out a stunning leg kick to the head. Within the blink of an eye, Hughes tumbled to the mat and couldn't withstand what came next. GSP took advantage of his depleted opponent and connected on several head strikes to finish off Hughes for good. The rising star earned his first welterweight belt and cemented his status as one of the most impressive fighters in the game. So, from a bone-crunching head kick to win the welterweight championship to one of the deadliest body shot TKOs of all time, these are George St. Pierre's greatest knockouts.